Oh, I'm doing it. All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 70. Is it really 70? Holy crap. For no particular reason, with your amazing host, Kerri Lewis, alongside of my incredible soul brother, Yankov. And today I am overjoyed to bring upon just like a kindred spirit, which comes from Anna Green Gables because I love that book, but a soul brother who really leans into love, just like Yanko and I. And so I'm so overcome with Justin Woods being on the show. So thank you for being here.
I appreciate it. I appreciate both of you. I appreciate both of you for your consistency in the delivery of this message, because I've caught a few of these lives, and your perspectives and the way you share and the places you draw from to bring multiple angles into communicating about love within ourselves and within each other. I think I really respect that, both of you. It's amazing.
I love that so much. Well, let's just dive into the meat and potatoes. This past week, you and I, you had tapped me to join something that you have been creating that you're passionate about. And then realize that at this moment in time, you really need to pour more into yourself, right? Because truly, and I believe wholeheartedly that love starts from going within and really tapping into our internal narratives and what calls to us. And so you paused or stopped the program. I have so much respect for that. Like when I got that message, I was like jumping in my chair. I'm like, oh, Justin gets it. So I love that because I believe talk is cheap. Yanko, myself, we can talk about our experiences, even overcoming some of the suffering we've been through, but to show up every day and make the choice to lean into what feels really good for me in this moment, despite the good opinion of others, despite the potential that I may be letting down my daughters or letting down my family. That is true unconditional love. And in that, we hold our power to embody it for others to follow, I believe. So I respect you immensely.
Yeah, choosing love for self is something, you're right, is easier said than done. And even life is a practice, right? Even choosing love is a practice on a day-to-day basis. And how quickly things can get away from you, when you're still focused on love, yet you're creating for love for other people, and you step out of practice for that love for self. And yeah, that happened to me very quickly. Well, over the course of the 4 years, I've been evaluating what I've been doing. And the more I look at it, the more I can see step by step how I made excuses as to why these practices weren't as important as what I was doing for somebody else. And yes, what we were trying to create was something very beautiful within addiction and mental health. But like, if the foundation is built off of sand, and this goes for families as well, like if your family is built on a foundation of sand because you're people pleasing for everybody around you, and you're not standing on solid ground, like, it's all going to come undone. And that can happen so fast. And I think, yes, it's one of the most difficult choices we have to make when we're first ready to be accountable to admit that and
Yeah.
accept it, which was really difficult, but also move forward with the decision to focus that energy back on ourselves.
I do want to highlight, though, for the listening audience, and something that I really, really, truly respect and admire. And this is why Justin, you're my people. So you were in the process of creating content for other people around self-care and taking care of themselves, and had that insight and took action on yourself. And where I, you know, really push back against the mental health communities and addiction recovery communities is exactly that, is we sit and create content, or we cultivate these tools and strategies to help people heal, but we don't look at ourselves first, or we don't actually apply that wisdom and knowledge to ourselves. And so that delivery falls short, right? And so the gift is we're all, myself included, right? We we come out of alignment so we can have contrast and recognize that, oh yeah, right, I gotta come back home.
Yeah.
But we have integrity enough to be like, oh, I'm out of alignment, I gotta pause and come back home. And that is so beautiful. That is really powerful.
Yeah, I think the return home is probably the greatest part of the journey. I mean, that's that's something that I in the last few days have just valued just so much, just going back into my heart center. And I mean, you hear that so much, especially within, whatever community, spiritual communities or, religious communities or whatever. People just use that term, living from the heart center. But when you really sit with that and you think about that, the heart has a mind, it has a function, it can lead you, it can guide you, it can give you answers. And we don't really operate from that perspective so much because our mind is so loud at times, and often it's the narrative that is leading the character in the story because it creates the story for the character, which is us. And I was able to step out of that story, and really put myself in my heart. And the heart is such a it's when we talk about living from the heart center, like, what does that mean? It's simple. It's really simple when we're listening to our heart, because it's really going to show you the areas of yourself that require attention. And I think for many of us, that education is something we lack because our minds are so loud, and it teaches us that distractions are acceptable and people pleasing is acceptable. But I think that the true gift is the practice of returning home to that ability to listen to your heart. And this is where I am. I mean, and my whole life is this, yet it's not, because my whole life was understanding that for other people, which, yeah, I'm good at. Kerri, you're really good at it too. Yanko, I'm sure you're really good at it as well. But we come to this life to become masters at something. And for me, I thought that mastery was in helping other people find themselves, but we're all here for the same thing. It's self mastery, to understand ourselves and in our skin, and be able to have that voice in our heart be so loud that that's where we operate from.
I'm so glad you brought this on, though, because the key to me is finding yourself, or whatever you think the self is. And in living from the heart, it's more of a not closing the heart when you hurt, and keeping that unconditional love going, because a lot of people tend to separate themselves from that hurt, or closing their heart on, and they're just, you know and I'll give you an example. If something happens to your child, you say, what are we going to do with this child? Not my child. But you kind of separate yourself from that situation, or whatever it's going on, to protect yourself or your heart from being hurt. And to me, it's being able to hold space and be in the moment when your heart is broken and somebody else's heart is broken, and still be able to get that joy and love going.
Yep.
You know, here's the thing that I see. We as people who operate from love can get caught up in this idea of doing. And the reality is we are beings for a reason. Like when we are in love, we simply be. We don't I always think of the quote that says a healed mind doesn't plan. And anytime I start to problem solve or try to come up with some idea of how things need to be, I'm like, oh yeah, right, a healed mind doesn't plan. And what do I need to do right now to feel yummy? And that to me is where you're at, Dustin, or what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is that, you know, we have been conditioned to perform in order to achieve a result, even if that result is altruistic in its goal, meaning creating content to help people heal from addiction, right? But that's still a performance. However, if I'm being and I'm walking down the street and I'm just experiencing something and I engage with somebody who may be in suffering due to addiction, and I hold space for them in that place without absorbing their experience, but also offering this love, that to me is the greater gift. And we cannot offer that until we get still and know ourselves. And I think that is where we've all, myself included, and I still do this dance at times, particularly as a mother of teenagers, where I get caught up in this idea that I have to do and have to remind myself, wait a minute, the very moment that my mind tries to convince me that I need to do something, my job is to be still and know. And that comes straight from a lot of spiritual texts. Be still and know. So get still. And that's why I love, who was it? Gandhi or somebody said, if you convince yourself that you don't have time to meditate for an hour, you should meditate for two. And people are like, whoa, what do you mean? And the reality is every idea that you don't have time to be still with yourself is the illusion that I hope that people start to recognize and break free from, because then you really operate in power rather than force.
You exactly hit it on the head. That is exactly why I shut everything down, is because the doing. I wasn't being anymore. Like I think that that's really where we get caught up. Even if you're, like you say, it's altruistic, and we're creating something beautiful, but we're doing, and we're missing the whole moment. We're not present. Like, I can make excuses as to why a sound bath isn't needed in this moment. I can make excuses as to why my meditation practice hasn't been going on for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, because I'm doing something for other people. This has more value right now than within myself. And that's exactly it. Like, regardless of what we think we're doing, really just take a step back and look at how you're being. I mean that, and that's funny that you said that, because I literally just had that thought like yesterday or 2 days ago. And it's you hit it exactly on the head. And I wake up in the morning, and my wife will ask me, she'll say, like, what are you doing today? And I'll say nothing. I'm not doing anything for anyone. I'm going to be today. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to be myself and do the things that I need to do for me. But that's just me being myself. And yeah, that is so important. Yet it's difficult because society normalizes these acts, or this performance, as you say, as being productive. It's selfish to be taking time for yourself. We feel guilty, and that can be normalized, and it's a learned behavior often that we learn from the people around us. But that's breaking generational trauma. Honestly, that is the end of a line within a lineage of families that were too afraid to take time for themselves and learn about themselves and actually tap back into their power. And I think that's where we are right now. Is many of us are generational breakers, that we are tired of the normalcy, of the discomfort of people pleasing and doing things all the time that aren't productive for our personal growth. That we take back this power and we step outside our comfort zone and say, you know what? I'm going to learn something new. And I've done this over the last 4 years, as you guys do as well. But it's a dance, like you say, it's in and out, because we're in new territory, and you've got, it's like it's like shinobis, man. You're training, you're constantly
Right.
stepping into the dojo, and it's just this crazy thing called life. And you are sometimes your greatest opponent. Often we are our greatest opponents. So
Oh, I believe we are our greatest opponent for
yeah.
sure. Because you're right. The mental chatter is so loud at times, and it's being able to recognize, and as Yanko would share, he shares quite often, that's not even your true self. Because if our true self is love, compassion, and peace, anything that contradicts that is an illusion in the first place. But myself included, and I can't speak for you, Justin, but we have similar backgrounds in addiction. And, Nana and I talk a lot about this, because Nana has a naturally optimistic personality. That boy wakes up happy, like jumps out of bed. I'm taking on a day, and has his whole life. Like, I've talked to his family. Whereas me, I had to cultivate that. And even still, right, through practices of spirituality, grounding, meditation, fitness, blah, 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 I cultivate that. But it is because that voice that I know is not true still holds a lot of noise, and it takes up space in my mind. And I am committed to showing up to be love and I cannot be love until I ground into love, and I will not step on the stage of the world and engage with other individuals until I've tapped into that. And that is just important, because otherwise I'm projecting my mess outward, and that's not one who I want to be, but it's not fair to anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, one of the best things that helps me ground into that is just, like we were saying, like what is self? Like this idea of self is a great disruptor in the whole experience, because we've been led to believe we're our names, or we're our titles, or we're the things that the people around us tell us we are, when in reality we're energy. We're just energy, a light source, operating within a vessel that has landed or woken up in this reality, that are surrounded by other pieces of energy. And all of us have the same thing going on the inside, yet we're so focused on what's going on the outside. So, when we really look at that, like, why is it so important for us to really differentiate for who we are on the outside, when in reality, everything that actually matters to us is on the inside, and operating from that space of energy within. And for me, I look at the whole experience as 8 billion pieces of God, or 8 billion pieces of the prime creator that have separated itself. And it's separated itself to see if those 8 billion pieces could be dropped into an experience that could be divided, that could be left with temptation, war, famine, all of this atrocity, all of this separation of this pure thing called love, this energetic source of love. But is this experience strong enough to bring all of those 8 billion pieces of love back together, so that evolution of energy can actually take place? And for me, that's kind of where I live, is within that reality, not within the wars of separation of the world, or poverty, or lack of education, or governments or religions trying to dictate what our life is all about. It's so much more than that. It's so much deeper, because if I look at myself from the energetic source within, it really allows me to step out each day and say, okay, all I got to do is talk to pieces of myself each day and help them remember who they are as well.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. You nailed it really good. I was just gonna say, I had a time in life where um, I was looking inside so much that I forgot why I'm here. And that wasn't the point, to be inside too much. And I had to come back. You know, and have the experience of interacting with other self outside, not just or maybe finding, or maybe I found peace with self within, and figure out that there's nothing going on. There's just bliss and everything. It's like, oh, there's no movement or anything, and I had to come down, and now I enjoy this human experience even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I have come to understand that I love Gail's point. I want to highlight this. In my experience, the only non-illusion is compassion and love. 100%. I totally agree. Um, and I also have come to understand, for me, that we are unique strands of the same collective consciousness. This is my way of understanding, like, this whole collection, because we are all one. And I owe it to myself and the collective to tap into the uniqueness of this strand that encompasses the whole, if that makes sense. And I can't do that until I learn myself outside of the narratives and the noise. And that's why, I truly believe authenticity is allowing the present moment to unfold without stopping it. On the show a couple weeks ago with Nana, I made a joke about, being interested in vanilla, and now I went with the chocolate, right? And like, I don't filter myself because it might offend somebody, because that's what comes to my heart in that present moment. And that is our power. That's our superpower, is when we can just do whatever comes to us. We are co-creating with creation, and hopefully in spirit, inspiring others to do the same. And that is the gift of our uniqueness within the collective, because it reminds the collective that they get to be that unique piece of the collective too. And when we get there, I mean, that we will see no war, we will see no famine. And it's interesting, I was talking to a client yesterday who was telling me, oh, this time everything's falling apart. I'm like, yeah, but if you really look at it, stoics, great spiritual gurus, there's never been a time where that wasn't a pervasive story. It's just that that's not the life I live in, because that's I cultivate truth, which is love and compassion. And that's what I think all of, well, the three of us, and I know Gail as well, is cultivating, is how can I love so deeply, tap into myself so much that it is an infectious light that hopefully encourages other people, that there's a completely different world out there when you stop uh conforming to or believing in this illusion that we've all bought into at some point in our lives.
That's the being, though. That's the being. We all have to do things we don't want to do, but who are you being inside of those things that you're doing, that you don't want to do? Like, take work for example. How many people are going to jobs that they don't love to do? Yet when you're at work, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to be somebody different. So you can conform to the political conversations or the narrative that's, suits the office agenda to fit in and to be accepted, or you can start having difficult conversations at work, and you can start just showing your transparency and your authenticity of who you are and what you truly believe in. And again, that goes back to that generational trauma that we're breaking, is by stepping into that power to be authentic. And what better place to perform, or what better place, sorry, to practice that than at work? I mean, when you start shifting within your own self, you can start to see the environment around you shift as well. And for many people, they'll say to me, yeah, but if I start acting this way at work, and I start showing people who I truly am, that job might go away. And I said, well, that's a blessing. You're holding on to something because it fits a certain narrative that society dictated to you as being more valuable than yourself, because you're holding on for retirement or security or benefit packages or whatever it may be. But in the reality of what life is, if your emotional balance isn't at, the foremost of everything you do, which comes with authenticity and honesty, then what are you doing with life? This is where it gets so difficult, is because we're too afraid. And it's fear is really the objective that everything goes back to, that we're talking about, which is ego. When we're afraid, it all comes down to ego, as to why we're not good enough, or why we can't do something, or why we shouldn't do something, or whatever it may be. When in reality, love will just push you out of your comfort zone and say, try
Yeah.
your best.
Well, it's interesting because rejection, I think, is something that so many people fear, right? This idea of rejection. And I get it, because I felt rejected by my family at a very, very young age for being unique. And so I conformed, and as a result, fell into addictions because I didn't fit the mold. And then I tried to, but never did that feel good for me. But what I realized is rejection is the illusion too, right? Because what happens is the more you step out of your comfort zone and push yourself towards what feels really good for you, it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else, but feels really good to you, you attract people who can hold space for, appreciate, and love you where you're at. I.e., Justin found me on Facebook. I don't even remember how Yanko and I found each other, but we found each other, had one conversation, was like, let's do a show. Gail Craft. Like, I have this unwavering faith that, first, I love the word no. If you can tell me no, cool beans. One of two things is going to happen. It was not meant for me, or I'm going to find another way to get it done that has nothing to do with you. Or if I'm rejected, I'm like, okay, cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the fact that right now in this time space interval, we aren't meant to connect. Who's to say that in a year we're not? And I've seen over and over and over again people who basically made fun of me for the way in which I chose to live my life hired me to coach them 2 years later, right? People who rejected my ideology of choosing love and not judgment a couple years later come to me and they're like, wow, you seem so peaceful. So the idea of rejection is an illusion, and yet it keeps so many people stuck in a box because they fear that they're going to shed. And look, the reality is there are family members of mine I do not engage with on a regular basis. I love them. I'm connected with them in spirit, but that doesn't mean that I have to entangle myself in the a mess that was once part of my story. And it's not rejection to me, it's self-love.
100%. But I think that that goes back to like how I operate from energy, or a perspective of energy. Because if we see ourselves as the energetic source within, the energetic source of love, then we understand what we're here to protect. And what we're trying to protect is that higher vibrational frequency. So we have many other experiences and many other situations happening around us that are in lower vibrational states due to that generational trauma of fear and that inability to accept themselves. So when we're talking or when we're seeing ourselves from this energetic point, it's really helpful to see the tools that we use in our day-to-day lives, which is like boundaries. So boundaries, even with family members, is an imperative part of the entire journey, because you set boundaries to allow people to live in their story or their negativity or what they do not know at this point. You can be yourself within that experience and get out of that situation as quickly as you can, as smoothly as you can, because you know what's more important in that moment, which is what's inside of you. Now, when you do that, it's never coming from a place of negativity or abuse or anything like that, where it has to be something negative towards that individual. Setting boundaries with love is peaceful. It's a requirement to be able to step out of certain situations and know that you have to come first. And I think that's really important. And what you were saying with rejection, I think the louder conversation that often gets missed is acceptance. We're so afraid to accept who we are in this moment that we fear the rejection, when in reality, it's always us who we've been looking for. When we can accept ourselves, which is love, you're never alone. And again, like you were saying, that opens up that higher vibrational frequency, which is a natural magnetic attraction for others that are vibing. We can actually use that term, that are vibrating at that same frequency, which is how all of us align. We're not family. We've never even met in real life. Yet, if I saw you on the street, you're my sister, because I realize that family is just something we've been led to believe comes inside of four walls. And that's just not true. We're all part of the same family. We're just breaking down those boundaries or those walls that limit us to seeing ourselves beyond what society says we are, and tapping back into that by connecting with each other, but first accepting ourselves for who we are.
Yeah. And accepting all of us, the nuances. Like, let's just be real, guys. I'm a scrappy little girl from the hood, right? And I can still, to this day, in all my beautiful expression of love, pop off on you if I'm pissed. And yet, I accept the whole of me. And it took me a long time, where Yanko shared that he just sat in blissful state and he realized, oh, I'm not here to just be blissed out. I realized, wait a minute, like, perfection, I'm already perfect. That doesn't mean that I can't have the human experience of feeling spicy and calling people out if that is what I am inspired to do. And I really limited myself for a little while there. And then I'm like, wait a minute, if I truly believe authenticity is allowing the present moment to unfold the way it is, sure, I am very conscious with my words. I believe words have power. But, if you make a poor choice and I'm like, dude, then I'm like, well, that's authentic too. And who knows what gift I'm giving that person in being able to be my unique, spicy self. So I do want to highlight that for people, because so many people, it's rare for people to see me spicy, and when they do, they're like, whoa, I didn't know you got like that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm still human. Of course I have a trucker's mouth. You know, so I'm highly inappropriate, because why be like conformed? And so I don't know, I just want people to know unconditional love is not conforming at all, and it is loving all of you, your the choice that you make in leaning into love, and the moments where, you know, I don't know, you feel like you didn't do as good of a job leaning into love. You love all of that, and that's a gift we give ourselves, and that's how you attract people who can just accept and hold space for the uniqueness of you. And I can say, Justin, I mean, me and Nana have that relationship. I mean, we hold each other in the full expression of each other without an expectation or judgment in any given moment, whether we're spicy or whether we're loving, whether we want to dress up in cosplay, or, you know, whether I want to go get lost in the woods and disappear for a couple days and let them know I'm good when I come back. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that ability to just be fluid. Sorry, I was reading this.
yeah, no.
Yeah. Accepting myself and understanding the experiences, simulation has changed my life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love how you say that, because I go back and forth with that. Like, 23 years on the street, man. Like, you learn some behaviors, right? Like, I had a whole version of myself before that I had created to protect, you know, the fear or the damaged child within myself. So 23 years on the street, you learn some poor practices and behaviors that you normalize, very quickly. And now I think, that was 5 years ago that I walked away from that, and I'm in and out like you as well. Like, I'll say something and I'll catch myself and I'll be like, "Whoa, that's how I used to be," or whatever. And I think that that's important, because we're there to you can evaluate who you are and who you want to be by, really allowing that part of yourself out. But if I'm being honest, sometimes I hold that back, and I'll see myself and I'll be like, why didn't I let that out right there, And I think it's actually important to self-express how we're feeling, and operating from a place of love will allow you to calibrate that delivery, with each
Yes.
each attempt, right? You get better and better at what you're trying to say, and you mix that spicy up with this love sauce, you know what I mean? And it transforms into this new thing. And I'm there right now, allowing that freedom to be implemented again in my life. It's because you just get this idea sometimes about, I guess when you're coming into a new version of yourself, it's just how far you take it, right? And Yanko, I totally understand what you're saying about just going inside and being in a complete state of bliss. Like, I can create a version of myself or try something new within myself and take it so far, which I recently just did. And I forget about that play. I forget about that other side of me that should be allowed to come out and integrate with this new part of me. So that's a super important part of life, trucker mouth or whatever I mean, however, I think it's just important to just be yourself and allow that to come out, and then really look at who you are in those moments. And if you like it, great. And if not, you have an opportunity to change it.
Without judgment. I love that. That's the thing, is there are moments, I mean, particularly, listen, raising teenage daughters, I'm just going to tell you, there are moments where old behavior comes out, and then instead of condemning myself, and this is what and this is for the parents, man, condemning yourself or should having yourself, or judging yourself as a bad parent is never going to help you uh establish a strong relationship with your children, but really, even more importantly, establish a strong relationship with yourself. And so when I show up that way, to your point, Justin, the gift that I have culminated over the course of these years is self-awareness, and say, "Ooh, that kind of felt sticky." And not only that, but being vulnerable enough to go to my daughter and say, "Hey, I really didn't like the way I showed up for you. I came from a place of fear. I was projecting, my insecurity around my past on you, and I apologize. In that, I really, not only do I give myself grace for leaning into old patterns of behavior, but I create an opportunity for deeper connection with my children. And I can say it's, we are like this. My kids and I are like this. And people misunderstand that as like we're always getting along. No, no, no. We are not always getting along, but we will call each other out on behavior that does not serve us. And we will be quick to be vulnerable about what we were feeling and why we behave that way, and give each other grace so that way we can come back to love.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, dismantling the hierarchy within, relationships is incredible, especially parenting. I mean, just like you can go to work and you can work on yourself, the most important place to do that is at home. When you have an opportunity with people that, come from you, this is your tribe. You're in these four walls together, yet so quickly these are the people that we can push ourselves away from or argue with on a day-to-day basis because they're the closest ones to us. Yet when in reality we have an opportunity to take the mask off at home, yet the mask still seems to be on even tighter at home because we're too afraid to make a mistake or, share about a difficult experience that we had in our life to actually humanize and normalize a relationship between humans rather than coming from an authoritarian perspective.
I love that so much. Yeah, 100%. I think the mask is most often placed at home, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate because think about it. How do you ever get your true needs met if there's a mask, right? If and I'll keep it real. Nana and I are 9 years in age difference, right? And in the beginning of our relationship, I'm like, dude, you're not meeting my needs sexually. If I didn't say that to him, I'd be 5 years in a relationship that didn't serve me. But most people do that. And again, it can be in all different areas. It could be around intimacy, it could be around work, what people love to do, it can be around sharing and household tasks. They hold so tightly to what they believe in their own mind, because everybody has their own perspective and backgrounds, to be correct, that they don't share what they feel, and as a result never get their needs met. And then on top of not getting their needs met, there's a huge disconnection. So I truly believe that when we go inside, when we truly love ourselves, not only are we building this unshakable intimate relationship with ourselves, but we create an opportunity to have that deep intimate relationship, not just with a loved one, but with friends. I can tell you, with Gail, with Yanko, with Justin, I could call any one of them up and be completely vulnerable and say, hey, I'm a hot mess express, I need somebody to hold space, and feel confident that the people that I lean into can bear witness to that, and just support me in a way that feels true. And that's intimacy, and that's being able to take that mask down and just be
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, like the practice of honesty and authenticity at home, it's so difficult to do in everyday society because we have so much fear around other people judging us. Yet, the opportunity to be practicing that at home where you would, often not say how you're feeling because that's literally how most of us are in the situations we're in is as a result of not being able to communicate our feelings because we don't think it's valid or we don't think it has enough um enough presence for what's important within our life in this moment. I mean, every single thing that is important to you or every single thing that you feel is not aligned with who you are has to come up. And that has to come up at home first, and especially, when your parents, like you are an example for what your child can become in this life. So if you're afraid or if you're treating yourself poorly, your kids are inadvertently going to see that that's an acceptable part of life, and
Yep.
treating ourselves poorly and not being seen and not being heard and not having our truth be valid is exactly why they practice this in their lives, is because it's normalized, and the people they look up to, they normalize it as well.
Yeah.
So I think that the greatest education we can give our children is our transparency, is our truth, is our vulnerability, is all of the mistakes we've made in our life, and not be afraid to share that. I mean, geez, like if you got in a car that you weren't happy about the choices that you made, when you were a teenager, and you would have loved to have done that differently, well, then share that education with your children so that they don't get in that car. If you're too afraid to talk about that, like, how's anyone going to grow from this beautiful education?
But you know what? I want to actually add something, a caveat to that, because I agree with you 100%. But also sharing and not controlling, because obviously right now, I mean, I have a dynamic with one of my daughters who is experimenting with substances. I have shared everything, very vulnerable about the experiences I had, and yet I owe it to her to have that experience for herself, because I truly believe when we try to control our children or any individual, this is another reason I get so hot about the mental health and addiction industries, because there's a lot of control happening. You need to follow 1 through 12 step in this order and blah blah blah, or you need to do this, and you don't. Really, you owe it to yourself to stay curious. And part of what I really impress upon my children, but particularly people I engage with, is I'm going to share with you what I experienced based on the choices that I made, that I understood, and what the consequences were, and still hold space for you to make some of those same choices, because I also understand that for you to recognize what serves you, you need to have that contrast, you need to have that angst, you need to wake up with a hangover, you need to wake up having made a poor choice, you need to suffer the consequence of a choice you made that wasn't in the highest good and may have repercussions, because that helps us learn ourselves more and learn what feels right and what takes us out of alignment.
Yeah, and I think that so often as parents, we try to give our kids everything that we didn't have, yet we very quickly forget that their experience is completely different than ours.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're curating the same environment that your childhood had, then yes, possibly you need to give the kids the same thing that you never had in your life. But if you're curating the same childhood environment that wasn't healthy for you in your own family, I think that that's a clear indication that you need to be looking at what you're doing and hold yourself accountable. And also, I think that experimentation is a very important part of life, because everyone is experiencing life as the result of their own choices. But the education that we can give surrounding these topics really help the individuals that we're trying to care for in this life make better choices based on the things that didn't work for us. I think that that's so important to just really see that as a form of parenting. I learned that when I try to protect, I am actually controlling from my perspective. I'm also not allowing others to have their lessons. I absolutely agree with you. I think that control is such a powerful part of the whole experience that we must be willing to let go of. And so hard for us to do that within our own lives, because we're afraid if we let go of control, what does that mean for the people we love? But that's where education, and transparency and honesty and openness is so, so important, because if we don't have that exchange within our family members, then they'll be too afraid to share their truth with us. And then that's where the need to control comes in the first place. It's just dismantling all of those boundaries and creating a space of openness.
Yep. I see it from a little bit of different angle. And to me, it's why I reinvent a different version of what I think I am, or what appears to be me, where I just can be. The tree doesn't want to be a bush, or it doesn't want to be a something else. It just is. So to me, it's mostly just being, and not having to do anything with having to reinvent myself, or become a different version of the self, or correct the version of self, or do any kind of anything self. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. You mean this within yourself? Like, you're not trying to
Yeah,
reinvent
there is
yourself?
no, like, there's just an awareness. There's no self, the self that appears to be a self. It's a made up character that we play, and to the self to try to correct that character and become a better character or change the character. And I'm thinking of like when you were talking about, oh, you go to work and you don't really like the place, and you can play it this way or you can play it the other way. You can be this character or the other character. If you just be, then there's no need to be anything else. You don't need to pretend to be something that you're not, because it takes a lot more energy, at least to me, to pretend to be something that you're not, or to change something, or to struggle, because there's no struggle if you just recognize that you're just being, and everything it's perfect the way it is. You don't have to change it, you don't have to name it, you don't have to describe it, or give it any kind of something, and you just enjoy it in the moment. Then there's no struggle, there's no needing to control, there's nothing, you're just being. Am I
Yeah, no,
explaining that correct? Or
no, I I understand. Yeah, no, that's I understand that a little better. I think for a lot of people though, you're right. You know, I completely understand what you're saying. That is so difficult for so many people to do because of these ideas that have been created externally from them. And I think that you know, a great representation of what you're saying is like with anxiety and stress. You know, I'll meet so many people that are in workplaces and they're stressed out or they're anxious. And when we were traveling, there was a lot of individuals in these new jobs that were feeling this way. And I said, well, who's putting that anxiety and who's putting that stress on you? And they would just look at me. I'm like, you're the only one that's putting all of that pressure on you. You're the only one that's carrying that. You're the only one that's creating all of these ideas externally from you, that you're being judged or that people aren't going to like you, or all of the story, like you say. And when you really see it from that perspective, like you're saying, you can tap back into that understanding and awareness of self. It's like, I am the one creating this entire experience around me. So what I am feeling is what I am creating based on what I am seeing or doing with what I have around me. And that's liberating. Once you start to see that and you're like, okay, wow, you mean all this pressure and stress from work is only coming because I choose to carry it? I'm the one damaging myself? Yes, you are. Because your boss is not sitting literally on top of you. You're the one that's carrying that weight. And that's a great way to get out of that, is to be able to see that.
But you
or
know
might as
what?
well enjoy it. You
Well,
created
Exactly.
it,
Exactly.
right?
I find though, here's the thing. To take responsibility for our experience, right, then requires us to take different actions. And that is a place where people get hung up, because they may start to realize, oh, I'm responsible for my internal narrative, which then creates my external experience. I'm responsible for this suffering. But the change that will be required to break some of that suffering feels too hard for people, and so it's easier for them to stay apathetic. Oh, it just is. And this is no judgment, right? I totally get it, because it can feel really hard. Change is something that is constant. We are constantly in change. And yet, how many times have any of us heard people say, oh, I hate change, I don't do change, I don't. The reality is that's an illusion. We're constantly changing. It's really being able to cultivate a a, a resilience to recognize that the unknown is the gift. We don't have to know how it's going to unfold, but we must make a different choice to have a different experience. If we no longer want to suffer, we need to start to say no to our boss if we're taking on too many work hours. If we are not getting our needs met in a relationship, we may need to walk away from that relationship. And that can feel like a very daunting experience for people. So it's easier for them to not, even if it's unconscious, take responsibility for what they're experiencing, because in doing so it forces you to take a different action.
Yeah, well, like you say, with change, it is so difficult for us to change because we fall into these patterns. Patterns are the, you know, one of the most destructive things for humans, because we get comfortable. And even within those patterns of discomfort, we can find comfort. And that's really debilitating to the entire journey. Like for myself, I used to work for my friend, 5 years ago. And, I had a comfortable little job, $40 an hour, overtime, all the overtime that I wanted by society standards, a benefit package, like, it was a good little gig. By society standards, I had something that was really great, something I could hold on to, an RRSP package that I could get to, or 401k, you guys call it, that I could get to in the set amount of time, and my life would be comfortable, dictated by 2 to 3 weeks vacation a year. When in reality, I looked at that and I was like, wow, I still have to get up on someone else's time. My vacations can be planned for the next 25 years. And I can actually figure out how much I'm going to make and save over a yearly basis, because my life is completely repetitive for the next 25 years. For me, that comfort became very uncomfortable. And I thought, you know what, I can do more, or I can shake this up. And I walked away from that job and I started my own company, and my own construction company. And here we are, 4 years later, I'm completely sovereign. I'm completely free. I can take 6 months vacation a year, which I often do. And, I see myself in a completely different perspective and reality, because I chose to do something differently in my life. And I think that even in these decisions where we have all this safety and all this structure, you just have to really look at yourself and say, like, what do I want? Like, what do I want in this life? And more so, what can I do? And I don't really let anything limit me, because I believe in myself. And I think that that's the key element that many of us miss, is this power, this extreme power to believe in ourselves.
Well, you know what's so funny? Do you know, people who have gone through addiction are the most resilient people. And I really believe, right, if you can break addiction to heroin or some type of drug, or you have taught yourself, if I can do that, I can do anything. And so I
Yeah.
look at some of these, and that's what I really cultivate within the people who have struggled with addiction. I'm like, if you beat hustling and making crystal meth for 20 years, do you really think starting your own business is going to be hard? Hell to the hell no, man. You made it 20 years on the street, right? And that is something that I think about, is I look at the expansiveness of people who have overcome a lot. I'm like, those people have an unshakable self-confidence. I'm the same way. I will walk into a room, whether you're a billionaire or whether you're homeless on the street. I align with both of you, but I know I'm equal to both of you. And I will fail forward all the time, but trust and believe I will get up, I'll pick my bootstraps up, and I'll keep on walking forward. And that truly is a gift we give ourselves. And to the point around change, listen, if a big step like leaving your job and building a company like Justin and myself did feels too hard, start small. It doesn't have to be this major change. It could literally be a small behavior change, right? Add water into your day. And when you do that, you start to teach yourself, oh, wait a minute, change isn't so scary. And then you can start to become more honest with yourself. If I have a choice between drinking water or drinking a bottle of wine, then what other decisions have I kind of fallen into that are causing me to live a life that doesn't feel good for me? And how can I take responsibility and make a choice that feels more supportive for where I want to be? And that, to me, is the power of moment by moment. Justin, you said earlier, choosing love is a day-to-day practice, and for me it's a moment-to-moment practice. I could be massively in love for 4 hours, and then all of a sudden something comes up, I'm triggered, and now I have to reset. And the same is with choices. I may be making all these great choices, and then I see this amazing thing that I want that's not aligned with where I'm going. I chase it, and then I'm like, nope, I gotta reset. And you just keep resetting, and that is our power of being present in the moment.
I love that. And I think the you know, the opportunity, every single opportunity, moment to moment, is an opportunity to make a choice that can be beneficial to our personal growth. So it's like you don't have to be holding on to regret and shame and all this that doesn't align for you. You know, like you say, each moment is an opportunity to know who you are and who you want to be. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing. That when we're able to see that power, because that's power.
100%. Which goes to the point for, the listening audience. I'd love to have you back to touch on this, because we really didn't share with the listening audience your journey to love, right? Yeah, I mean, you shared that you were on the streets for 25 years, but what was the experience that got you to love? But if you think about it, in that moment, I imagine you had a decision to make, and you got clear about where it is you want to go. And as we start to wrap up the show, what I would say is, for me, I got clear about the things that didn't feel good, and I got clear about the things that felt really good. Connection, compassion, curiosity, play. And that became my lens. And so if I was leaning into choices that took me away from any of the core things that I knew were important to me, that were non-negotiable, it helped me make a decision quicker. So I didn't fall back into that pattern of behavior and get stuck there for a long period of time. And so it's really important for people to recognize, if you don't like where you are, can you at least create a concept of what you would like to experience? Because that will help you create guiding principles to make choices that feel more aligned with where you want to be, rather than what you've known.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's a constant flow back and forth. It's a constant, uh, practice to unlearn everything that we think is, everything. That's basically what we're doing, is we are here to unlearn. It's all about the unlearning. And, what am I doing on a day-to-day basis? I am unlearning everything that was programmed into me to be able to operate from my own space of awareness, like Yanko was saying, which is the most important thing that we all have, is the awareness and the ability to, and I think the awareness is what gives us the power.
I know Kerri's having technical difficulties right at the end of the
Technical
show.
difficulty.
but that's okay though. That's why we're doing it impromptu,
That's it.
and everything is not scripted. Things
I
like
love
that
it.
might happen. Yeah. So
All right. Well,
Mike,
listen, audience. Justin, I know you're doing you, so no pressure. Even if it's a year from now, you are welcome to join us on this show anytime you feel inspired and in spirit to have a good conversation with us, because it felt so yummy. For the listening audience, I'll make sure that we drop Justin's information. He is doing his own thing. I don't know where his journey's taking him, but everything he speaks is love, and so he's worth a follow. And my parting words for you this week is, honor your body. Yanko and I were talking earlier about, both of us have been called to take naps the past week. I love my naps. So if you feel depleted, recognize that. And what can you do in this moment to nurture this temple that houses the energy that you are? Because you get to do that anytime you want. So that is my parting advice.
me, I'm going to suggest that. I love that. I think I'm really just going to think about the kids right now. If you have kids, or you don't even actually have to have kids, but like all of the mistakes, all of the things that you're ashamed of, or that you regret, or you're not that aren't sexy in your life, that you're not excited to talk about, like homelessness, addiction, mental health, whatever it may be. Anything that brought you to these things is wonderful, wonderful education for those around you. So if you really want to transmute or repurpose something that's very difficult in your life, just share it with those around you, and don't be afraid of helping somebody else with what never served you in your life.
I love that.
Yeah. And I'll say I'm really grateful for everyone sticking around, interacting with us, and I'm wishing you all a wonderful weekend. And we like hanging out with you guys every Friday. So send us your feedback. Follow Justin, follow me, Kerri. Send us some info, ask questions. We'll be excited to talk to you all. So thank you.
Much love, yeah. Thank you, Yanko. Thank you, Kerri.